Hello, my name is Matthew Martinez, and I'm going to be discussing about the Republican Party in Arizona, but also how the Republican Party plays a huge and vital role to American politics nationwide. The genesis of the Republican Party stems not from the Reagan era of the 1980s, nor did it stem from the 1950s of President Eisenhower. The Republican Party has played a huge role throughout American history. The Republican Party's first presidential nominee happened in the election of 1860 with President Lincoln as the Republican nominee. The Republican standpoints at that time was still the same: smaller government, less governmental intervention, and states' rights. And that's still true today. When people say that there was a switch between the Republican Party and the Democratic Party in the 1940s to the 1960s, that is a misconception. What the Democratic Party was pushing in the 1930s to the 40s was a socialistic idea, which is still true today, with Democratic nominees such as Bernie Sanders and Congresswoman AOC. The Republican Party historically has always been a party that's been focused on economics and developing a strong family base. Since the origin of political turmoil in the United States, within the Federalist Party and the Anti-Federalist Party, the Federalists supported a stronger centralized government stemming from Alexander Hamilton and other representatives such as James Monroe. The Anti-Federalists, I would probably prefer them as the original Republicans, supported smaller government, more states' rights, and allowing individuals to have their natural freedoms. And their natural freedoms were stemmed from, in John Locke's second treatise, he described individual freedoms as to freedom of life, liberty, and property. Now, those ideals did change slightly when Thomas Jefferson wrote that America is on the pursuit of happiness in replace of property in the Declaration of Independence. And now Thomas Jefferson was an anti-federalist while he was writing the Declaration of Independence. And that the Declaration of Independence is a staple of Republican and conservative values today because it represents individual freedoms and departing from a tyrannical government, allowing an individual and the individual nation to have self-determination and self-sufficiency in order to make their own policies that are best suited for that nation. That's why Republicans today and the Republican Party is so keen on supporting individual freedoms rather than a blanket government to cover all of the nation. As we've seen in the Republican Party, that they support candidates who are in favor of just small localized government. Republicans today and since the 1980s have been supporting smaller governments, less regulations, and less taxes for individual freedoms and the people. In Arizona, the Republican Party has kept those values the same. Now, Arizona plays a unique role in the United States as more of a moderate state compared to the rest of the nation. Arizona has seen politicians like Barry Goldwater, who is a staunch conservative. And the conservatism is the idea of preserving values that have worked in the past to keep on in posterity. And the Constitution is clear about this. In the preamble, the Constitution talks about how the purpose of government is to preserve the blessings of liberty to the next posterity of generations. And now the Republican Party is a staunch supporter of that, preserving what has worked in the past, economically, socially, to the next generation of Americans, so that the values in the past are still prominent in the future. Conservatism, in essence, is the idea of preserving values, traditional values. The idea of conservatism is to conserve ideas and values in the past to the future generations. Conservatism is the ideology that is centered on preserving conservative thoughts, both economically and socially. And the Republicans, or the Republican Party, is not necessarily the ideology, but the party that's that centers around conservatism. vice versa. Liberalism is the social idea that it makes up the framework to the Democratic Party today. There's no better supporter of the American dream than the Republican Party, especially the Republican Party of Arizona. They are keen on preserving the family value, the family unit, because they know that is what's best for economics, that is what's best for society, and they know that's what's best to keep a nation going, to provide for future generations to come. Though the Republican Party wasn't called the Anti-Federalist Party, a lot of their values still stem from the Anti-Federalist Party. The Anti-Federalist Party eventually became, in the 1800s, the Whig Party. And the Whig Party eventually became what we know as the Republican Party, also known as the GOP, which means the Grand Old Party. Nationalism plays a role in the Republican Party. Now, nationalism in this sense doesn't mean overly boasting about one's nation, thinking it's better than the other, but nationalism to the sense of self, pride, and devotion for one's nation. The Republican Party, compared to the Democratic Party, is more nationalistic than the Democratic Party. The Republican Party is in favor of a strong national identity, strong national borders, and strong national unity. After the 2020 election, there's been a lot of debate what's going to happen to the new Republican Party, or if there will be a new Republican Party after the defeat of President Donald Trump. The Republican Party, as of today, is still a party that is centered on nation over globalization, and a party that is centered on individual freedoms and individual liberties rather than a collective good, all working for a socialism cause. The Republican Party, stated by President Donald Trump, won't be divided. There won't be a patriot party stemming from the Republican Party, rather a strong centralized Republican Party that is centered on those aspects and those basic liberties. As of to Arizona will see an interesting play out in the 2022 midterm election. Doug Ducey's seat is up. Arizona will see probably one or two congressional spots that are open, leading to 11 in total congressmen representing Arizona. We will also see our Secretary of State's position up for grabs, and there are Republicans who are eager to fill those spots. So the 2022 election will be an interesting year for the Republican Party of Arizona and Republicans across the nation. Thanks so very much for listening to this video. I hope you enjoyed learning more about the Republican Party and how it plays a role in Arizona, and also to the national political situation. Thank you so very much.